Hello and welcome to Spherical Luminosity's YouTube Live. We have, Chris and I have just arrived in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico, our new home, and we're just setting up. So this is why a little strip down in terms of our backdrop. But I am really excited about today's session. We're talking about something that can so easily steal your momentum in 2023. So we're going to be discussing it so you know what to look out for and what to do about it. So to begin, let's comment in the chat what your first name is and where you're from so I can see you and say hello. We have Anne Rudd from Minneapolis, and Fiona is here, and Beta's here from Toronto. I see Pauline here from California, and Michael and Mary holding down the fort in Colorado. Hello, Susie Martin. I think you're from Utah, aren't you? I think so. Yeah. And Marlene from Albion, California? Anyway, wherever that is. It must be Albion, California. I don't think I know where that is. And we have Catherine coming in. I'm not sure from where, but hello, Catherine. And Marty from Julesburg, Colorado. So hello, all of you who are participating, and to all those people who I haven't said hello to. I get a chance to say hello to you just now. So a few of you, which is fun for me and hopefully fun for you guys. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Karen Cheong. Many of you know me already. And like I said, some of you don't. So for those of you who are new, I help to catalyze awakening and a rise in human consciousness by releasing people's blocks at what I refer to as frequency level, amplifying your awareness of the divine within so you can recognize and live the abundance and limitlessness of your true nature as infinite, indestructible consciousness. This is your birthright, and the time for humanity to awaken to this possibility is now. So for those of you who are brand new to frequency work and don't know much about it, I can only give a brief overview in the amount of time I have. So after this, if you want to learn more, I'd really strongly recommend checking out episodes. Number 154. I know it seems random. I feel like I'm playing bingo, but it's number 1, number 154, and 176. Okay, so it's 154, and 176 of my podcast and blog entitled Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, which you can find on this very same channel. Okay, so the first 2 episodes are all about the fundamentals of frequency work. Okay, and the 176 is like a reboot of that. And also in another episode, if you want to add on to that, is episode 131, where we discuss the top 18 questions we get here at Spherical Luminosity. And additionally, there's also the How It Works section of the newly revamped website, sphericalluminosity.com. We put a lot of work into that to help you guys find out more about what frequency work is all about and hopefully more usable. So go check that out if you haven't lately. So today we are talking about what can steal your momentum in 2023 so you can watch out for it, and also how to empower yourself so you can have more momentum as you move into this new year and more transformation. So before I go any further, if you like this YouTube live, please hit the like button and comment after the live is complete, because that really helps us to grow the channel so we can help more people. It's not really about, it's funny, the growth of the channel by itself isn't that meaningful to me personally. It's really about helping more people. So if you can hit the like button and channel and comment after the live into the comments, that would really help us a lot. Okay, so I talk a lot about momentum, but what do I really mean when I say that? So I'll start off today by addressing what momentum is, why it's so important right now. Then I'm going to talk about the 2 things that will steal your momentum the most, and the 1 critical thing you can do to give yourself the most acceleration. Okay, so that's quite a lot. It's going to be a very full YouTube live. It's really meaty, but I feel really important. So to me, momentum is twofold. Okay, so I'm back to these cue cards. Anybody who has done full spectrum coherence mastery remembers my little cue cards. I thought they were kind of fun, so I brought them back. So I'm moving it too much. Chris is telling me I shouldn't be moving so much. So anyway, hopefully you can read that. So the way that I see momentum is twofold, actually. Okay, so the first aspect has to do with what I call, okay, now I have dry fingers, so I can't pick up my cue card, but here we go, has to do with what I call catalytic force. Okay, so catalytic force required to get you unstuck and into motion. Okay, so that's one aspect of momentum. The second aspect of momentum has to do with this, the rate of acceleration of your transformation once you're unstuck. Okay, so this is measured to some degree by how you feel about and perceive your own transformation. All of that is a reflection of how high your vibrational rate is, or said differently, your frequency resonance. Okay, so momentum is required for transformation to happen. Okay, because if there's no momentum and you're still, chances are not much transformation is going to happen, right? So as unless you get, sorry, I'm just going to modulate that a little bit. Unless you get to a high enough resonance that stillness actually becomes something that propels you forward. But for most people, when they begin, they need momentum, okay, to carry them forward. I just want to make that little distinction. So, as your vibrational rate or frequency resonance rises from releasing distortion patterns, and as you become more self aware, more accountable, and more skilled at confirming the removal of the distortion patterns that you've been releasing, momentum starts to happen at a greater and greater rate. It's really totally awesome. So, so meaning the speed of positive transformation in terms of how you see the world, how you feel about your life, the opportunities that literally fall into your lap, the synchronicities that happen, the magic and speed at which you create manifest, and generally how empowered you feel really starts to become much faster and easier. And it can get to the point where it's really kind of fun because it's almost instant sometimes. So I'll just tell you a little story. So over the past weekend, what happened was, as you have heard me just say, we just moved to San Miguel de Allende like 3 days ago. And we have some friends who live here who were very kind and helped us get like our networking set up so we could, broadcast live soon after we arrived, and helped us get a bed because we're basically in an empty house right now with no furniture. So we have a bed, which is nice, and networking. So anyway, they were helping us with these things, which was really lovely with them. And they basically had to pay the people who were helping us get ready for us because we weren't here. So we owed them like 13,000 pesos, okay, which is about, I don't know, like 650 about US dollars, right? So that for some people in the United States isn't a big deal, right? You could carry around 650 bucks in your pocket and not really, depending on where you live, feel like that was a tremendous amount of money. You could just walk around with that, feel pretty comfortable. But here, where we are now, that's a lot of money. And the way the pesos bills were fitting in Chris's pocket, it was creating this little like mound in his pocket. So it's quite obvious that he had something substantial in his pocket. And I was thinking to myself, man, I really wish we would see our friends soon so we could just give him this cash because I just don't want to lose it. And literally, I thought that and I looked over my shoulder and there he was walking down the street. I'm like, what just happened? Like, that was totally amazing. So we got to give each other a hug. We got to return his big pile of cash. And all of that happened almost instantly, like within a second of me thinking it. So this type of thing starts to happen more and more. And it becomes almost this delightful game of, who knows what's going to happen. So that's what I mean by your creation manifestation can really speed up, right? So momentum is important right now because consciousness is rising at an unprecedented rate in this current window. So now, many of you have heard me talk about this window of time when there is a movement upwards across the consciousness levels in the all that is for those of us who choose to rise in consciousness level. Okay, it's not just happening for humans, it's not just happening at this consciousness level, it's happening at all levels. Okay? And so there's this upward momentum that's generated for all to move up if you choose to take advantage of it. You don't have to, it's an act of free will. So now I'm going to back up a little bit to give you more context, especially for those of you who are new. So, for those of you who don't know, there's a lot of talk about consciousness level and dimensional planes and blah, blah, blah. So, when I talk about consciousness level or dimensional plane, it's simply a vibrational rate. Okay. As the consciousness levels or dimensional planes, however you want to talk about it, rise, what we experience and who we are individually and collectively radically changes. So, at the higher levels of consciousness, the heavier, denser frequencies like abuse or fear or greed, scarcity, oppression, and other lower level frequencies exist not at all, actually. All right. Because they can't be sustained at that level of consciousness. So we experience more of a sense of our own authority as we move up into these consciousness levels. Our innate ability to create manifest very quickly comes in. Okay, like that example I just gave. And we feel more of what is true, which is that we are one with everything and everyone. So how we act affects the whole, which of course affects us. And we really start to live what I call spherical abundance, or abundance on all levels, spiritually, in your relationships, financially, basically everywhere in your life. Okay, so the physical mirrors your experience on frequency level, okay, or on spirit level. I say those two things synonymously. So, momentum is important in terms of raising your frequency resonance enough to take advantage of this window, which is open for a relatively short period of time, where we can really jump in our frequency resonance to a newer, higher consciousness level because of all this momentum that is happening in the all that is. Okay. So it's kind of like a wave, and you get to like crest, surf that wave, in addition to your own work. So it just gives you a lot more upward momentum. So with that context, what will slow you down in terms of your momentum in 2023? Okay. Two things that can totally screw you, right? In terms of your momentum. All right. So first thing, number one, habituation. You can see I kind of ran out of space here, but hopefully you can read that. Habituation. All right. So, why? Well, so much of what we do is by habit. So, without thinking about it, okay, even down to the way you brush your teeth or put on your underwear, we're very habituated creatures. And it's not just these physical things we do, okay? It's how we approach problems, it's how we approach the unknown. It's how we approach new people or circumstances, the rigid expectations we have about things in our lives and what we think is going to happen. All of that is habituation. And more than the sameness, okay, is that when we're in habituation, we are very unaware that we're in habituation. We're unconscious. Okay? We don't even realize that we're on automatic. Okay? That's a very bad thing for momentum. So, to be clear, okay, some things that are muscle memory are helpful to have, right? So, I'm talking about like if you're driving a car that is stick shift and you know how to clutch in, you shift, you accelerate, etc., without thinking, because that's a form of muscle memory. Okay, well, obviously that's totally helpful, right? That's distinct from what I'm talking about now, which is when you're unconscious and not present in whatever it is that you're doing, thinking, or feeling, right? So just to take that example a little further, you can have muscle memory of how to drive a car with a stick shift and be very present driving and aware of what's going around you. Or you can be driving that very same car with the muscle memory and totally spaced out or distracted up in your head thinking about your problems or who said what to whom and what you're going to eat when you get home or whatever. Okay. So the less you're in the present moment of time and centered in the body, the harder it is to influence your reality and to create something different because you're not even really aware of what is happening right in front of you. And you're not in what I call the 0 point. So now, many of you who have come onto these YouTube lives know my little famous example. But if you don't know what the 0 point is and why it's so incredibly important to momentum, transformation, and creating the life you want, I'd recommend watching episode 151, which is, I think, called The Foundation of the Reality, the 0 point. Okay, you can find it on this channel. So I recommend watching that, right? Because it's a like 40-minute kind of technical explanation, but one that's very important. Okay. The other thing about habituation is that the more that you're stuck there, the more attached you are to things being the same. It's kind of weird. Okay? So if you think about it, if you're in habit a lot, there's kind of this calcification that happens with habit. We become comfortable in our habituation because it's known, and it's not even that we always think the way we're habituated to doing or seeing things is necessarily better. It's just simply known to us, right? And it's habit, it's unconscious. So it can be hard for us to let that go, and we become oddly close to things changing. Things changing. It's really weird. It's like, um, even if it's changing for the better. Like if, for example, someone said to me once, one of the ways that you can really disturb a lot of women is by changing where things are in the grocery store, because we know where we're going, we know what we need to get, and if you change where it is, we get pissed off. All right. It's kind of similar, all right? So we get close to things changing, even if it's like better that you can reach the peanut butter or the almond butter now, okay? So we're measuring, and the reason that happens is because we're measuring the change against the known of what is habituated rather than being open to the change. Okay? We're in this comparison thing. So the other thing that habituation does is it closes us off to adaptability, to being able to pivot and to change and be fluid. It can also totally limit your ability to dream of different possibilities. So, this is an interesting exercise. Perhaps you can ask yourself, are you always trying to manifest the same things, experiences, and relationships? Are you? We can even habituate in terms of what it is we want to experience rather than creating something different and new. Isn't it interesting? That can become just like this kind of like rote habituation. We like shut, I mean, if you believe the possibility that you can create anything, but yet here you are creating the same like 5 scenarios over and over again. It's kind of an interesting thing. Yeah. So habituation will 100% slow down your momentum because it takes you out of the awareness required to be in that forward momentum, which happens best when you're present and centered in your body in the 0 point. Okay? So the more you can be surrendered in the present moment, confident in your ability to adapt, even if you're uncertain as to the outcome, the more you're willing to follow what unfolds in front of you instead of staying within the habituated thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that you can even justify as quote unquote right, the more momentum you have for transformation and change. Okay? So, the more you release your distortion patterns, the clearer your habituation comes to you. It's the oddest thing. Okay, it's like you clear your distortion patterns and you're like, whoa, I totally did not even realize that was a habit. That thought pattern, that belief, that feeling, that behavior is a habit. But once you start to release your distortion patterns, you can see it more easily. And why is awareness important? It's important because then you can more easily let it go. If you're not even aware, how are you even going to know that you want to let it go? Right? All right. So the second thing, so I talked a lot about what? Habituation, right? That's the first thing that's going to slow you down and totally steal your momentum. All right. The second thing, because I promised you two, the second thing that can really slow you down in terms of your momentum is this: your attachment to your identity. Okay. This is huge. So almost all of us are very attached to who we think we are. It's kind of the ego mind's way of keeping itself feeling stable and important, like, ah. And it's funny, I had a friend who just shared the story with me recently, and she is, it was a fun little illustration of this, so she's letting me share it. And she's Scottish, and she also happens to live here in San Miguel de Allende, and she is learning how to speak Spanish. And for anybody who has learned a foreign language as an adult, you'll know that it takes quite a lot of effort to do that. Well, for many of us, it does. Yes, you have to actually practice. And so she's been taking a lot of classes and been very diligent and has speaking partners and listens to media in Spanish. She's really trying. She's not just letting it go. She's actually very active in her learning of Spanish so she can relate to other people Mexicans in their language. So in any case, here she is with her learning, and she happened to meet somebody new who is Mexican, and she was speaking to this person in Spanish. And she was in like this total flow moment. Okay, so here she is speaking Spanish. She's in the flow. She's feeling good, and the Spanish speaker, the Mexican, says to her, "Your Spanish is excellent. Your accent is so good." And my friend stopped, and she thought, "Well, but I'm Scottish. So I don't want to." It's the funniest thing. Like, if I speak Spanish really well, I'm going to become less Scottish. Now, it's not a rational thought. It's just that in that moment, that idea of her speaking Spanish well challenged her identity of who she is as a Scotswoman. These things aren't rational. Okay. They're just how we associate with our identity. And later, when she told the story to her husband, he was like, "That makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't have anything to do with your Scottishness." She goes, "I know, it seems totally absurd to me as well." But that was what popped up for her, okay? Because she's cleared enough of her distortions that she literally caught herself thinking this. So that's what I mean by when you clear enough your distortion patterns, you see these things and they like completely don't make sense. But you can see how that will limit her, right? So it's like, well, if I don't want to lose my Scottishness, then I better not speak Spanish as well, right? Which is again not rational. But do you see how these things aren't rational? It's how you identify yourself. Okay, so I'm telling you this story. Why? Because when we think that we're changing too fast, or things are too good around us, or that we're doing better than we should be, or that we deserve, often we will throttle that growth because that's not who we are. Okay. Or we're afraid of losing who we think we are. So the more you can be aware of your beliefs about who you are from your little s self perspective, or the perspective of the very physically bound ego mind. Okay. For those of you who knew and don't know what the little s self is, and the rules you have for the way things should be, the easier it is to also uncover your expectations and your self imposed limitations. And when you get high enough in resonance, like my friend, you can laugh at yourself and be like, "Well, geez, I mean, that's not a very helpful identity that I have there." Okay. And then she can release that. So the less attached you become to who you think you are, to your sense of identity, the more momentum you have for transformation. The less you're attached to your identity you are, the more you acknowledge your own fears, your weaknesses, your assumptions, your beliefs and conclusions and expectations of what is possible and not possible, the faster you can get out of your own way and the more momentum you have. Okay? The more you release your distortion patterns, the more your frequency resonance rises and the clearer your own attachments become to you. You get to see them more clearly. You start to question, like, where did I get this belief from that this is true? Or you'll say something to yourself and catch yourself and think, is that really true for me? And like, where'd that come from? And that makes no sense. Why do I say that? Okay. Just like my friend did. So the more we strip away these distortion patterns, the clearer and clearer the big S self perspective becomes. So, what do I mean by big S self perspective? For those of you who do not know, the big S self perspective is the self that is you, that is infinite indestructible consciousness and knows it. Okay? Meaning that it has a much bigger perspective and we perceive and experience life from our essence rather than purely from the limited perspective of the small s self or the ego mind, which really is quite limiting and can often be a pain in the butt. So now, those are the two things, right, that can really steal your momentum. They're massive, right? And it's really important to be aware of them. So I promised you one other thing, which is one pivot or reframing that I found to be critical to creating greater momentum. In addition to being aware of habituation and attachment to your identity, it's this, okay? It's shifting from the mindset of healing to one of growth. Okay, so from healing to growth. So, what do I mean by this? All right. So, a lot of people on a spiritual path focus on healing, which I understand. And of course, everyone has been hurt, and some much more than others. Some people really suffer physically and are in a lot of pain or are dealing with a debilitating disease. But focusing purely on healing usually means to release something that we're experiencing or have experienced that is bad or painful with the hope of returning to a normal or healthy state. But when we're in that mindset, we don't usually question what that healthy state is. There's a greater focus on what's wrong and what we're trying to get away from, okay, or to move through or get past. So what I'm not saying is that if you're suffering, you should just ignore it or that there's something wrong with you if you want to improve your situation. Okay, so just to be really clear, I did not say that. Of course you want to be better, to experience life without that suffering. It sucks. Okay, so I'm not belittling it. My point simply is this is a small shift, but this is really important. When our primary focus is on healing, we're in resistance to the state that we're in, and our focus is on getting away from something, which is a fairly energy poor impetus, versus the excitement of being called to something better. Okay? So if you're able to focus more on growth than overcoming pain or wounding, okay, in a way of like just healing, often a very subtle internal shift happens that's very, very important. Okay. What happens when you focus on growth is it's almost like you can accept to a certain degree whatever is happening. Okay. So that what is, and that you're choosing to use it to grow from, to strengthen, to experience a higher resonating experience, to give yourself momentum and to get you to where you're going next, however that looks. Okay. If your main focus is on healing, the underlying belief or perspective is that there's something fundamentally wrong with you and that you're disempowered relative to whatever it is that you're experiencing. But when you've made that shift to growth, regarding the growth as transformation, or sorry, I should say that differently, regarding growth and transformation as more important than overcoming the wounding, that adds a tremendous amount of momentum or force to your journey. Okay. So I know that's kind of a radical shift, what I just said, but it's an incredibly important internal one. And it's empowering rather than disempowering. So now you know what to look out for that will steal your momentum. The solution to all of this is to release your distortion patterns that keep you in habituation or an attachment to your identity or stuck in the old mentality of healing versus growth. And that's exactly what we're going to focus on in the GFC today. I know I talked for a really long time. However, this was very important and I felt like it needed to all go together. So that is why we talked about it in one complete bundle. So now I'm going to take some questions and move into the GFC. But before I do that, I'm going to do our very first giveaway. Yay! So it's our new first attempt at it. So we'll see how this goes. So first of all, please comment after the live is complete if you felt this YouTube live was helpful and or powerful to you. And if you could click on the like button, that would be awesome. So what we're giving away is the maximizing, since this is all about momentum, is giving away the maximizing momentum deep dive that we gave last month as replays for those of you who didn't get it, or you have the choice of the cultivating passion deep dive, which is happening currently. It is your choice. And Chris is going to, I'm going to close my eyes and he's going to scroll through and I'm going to randomly say stop. And whoever his cursor is on is going to get it. All right. So, all right, we're gonna try this for the first time, people. We don't know if this is gonna work very well, but this is the fairest way we could think of to do it. All right. So I'm gonna close my eyes. Here we go. Chris is gonna scroll and stop. Okay. So this is Catherine D. And so, Catherine, if you could just tell us your whole name And oh, if you could, yeah. So just write into info at and just let us know that you were the one who won the free giveaway for attending this YouTube live. Okay, and then you have your choice of those two deep dives. All right. Okay. Well, that was exciting. Okay. So now we're going to go to questions, and then I'm going to get to the GFC. All righty. So here we go. Congratulations, Catherine. All right. Does anyone have any questions? Mhm. I don't know that we see questions. Okay. Um, I'm just waiting for the questions to appear. And if there are none, we're just going to go into the GFC, which is totally fine with me. So I'm just giving you time to ask. Remember, if you're going to ask a question, to add question marks or question in capital letters so we know that you have a question. I don't understand that question. Oh, I can answer that. Yep. So someone asks, what challenges do you see coming up this new year? A lot. Like brace yourself, people. Okay. So it's a lot because when you have this much kind of change that happens in consciousness levels, things in the physical mirror that jump. So especially for those, now remember, you are not a single island floating around, not attached or part of the whole. You're very like, connected to everything. So you have to remember that you are the frequency resonance you are, and you can adapt to a certain level. And then there's everybody else who is doing whatever they're doing, right? So there's going to be a lot of chaos. So for those of you who did not watch the YouTube live we gave last year, well, excuse me, last month. Okay, there's a whole. It's still live on YouTube where you can watch what I'm predicting is coming into 2023. So the weather patterns are going to get way more severe. We're going to see a lot of flooding and drought, like right after each other. Okay, or extremes in temperatures. That's what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot more chaos when it comes to random violence. There's going to be things like more instability in terms of what we see in terms of our leadership, and that's probably what's going to happen. Like more, there's going to probably be more visibility into things that we thought were stable and the way things always were, and there's going to be likely a shakeup in terms of our um, like integrity. Okay, so how people show that, we're also probably going to see a lot. It's interesting. On the one hand, a lot more oppression, and the other hand, a lot of like rising up against it to a certain degree. So that's going to happen. And it just gets very strange with regards to time because the frequency resonance of time changes as consciousness rises. So if you don't know what the frequency resonance of time is, I recommend watching the episode called The New Frequency Resonance of Time. I can't remember what episode it is, but if you look on the podcast and blog and you search the new frequency resonance of time, you'll find out more about what that is. But when the new frequency resonance of time happens, it means that you, as a being, depending on your frequency resonance, can access higher and higher levels of frequency resonance of time, which means that your experience of time will change. So you can get more done in less time. Things happen faster, things align better, synchronicities happen. And if you're in Living Your Brilliance, you know this because we just did this on Monday. It can also cause distortion in your field where it feels like you're really out of time, that you're running out of it, that you can't catch up, and that type of thing. Okay, so it can cause distortion in time at the same time. So all of this that I've said in terms of challenge And not to mention like the amount of emotional drama that's going to happen in relationships, which are going to get a little likely going to get a little rocky, as you can imagine, as everyone experiences this on some level and is more or less able to hang with the change. That is going to present all kinds of challenge. So my suggestion is, in the face of that challenge, is to release your distortion patterns and do the frequency work, because what that does is it really creates this internal stability, which not only allows your frequency resonance to rise, it keeps you from being internally rocked by what's happening around you, okay, and focused on your own center and the present moment and being centered in the body, which is really important in terms of accessing higher and higher levels of experience, life, reality, that type of thing. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question. All right. Okay. Okay. So, how does identity relate to lineage, culture, blah, blah, blah? Okay. So, one question is, how does identity relate to lineage, culture, and gender? It's funny, it's like lineage, culture, and gender. Gender, to me, is a pattern that is to some degree learned from lineage, culture, and religion. Okay, so there's the feminine and the masculine, okay, which are two forces, which are frequencies that come through the embodiment. We embody the masculine and the feminine, both, we embody both to different degrees. So some people relate more to the feminine and some more to the masculine. It does not matter what physical body you're in. I'm talking about what you relate to more, which is more dominant in you, right? So for example, some women relate more to the masculine within them, even though they're in a female body, and vice versa, right? So it really kind of depends. So gender is something that is part of your identity, and often something that is taught and very much shaped by the distortion patterns of your lineage, your culture, and your religion. Those three things, lineage, culture, religion, completely, very much, not, I shouldn't say completely, that was inaccurate. I overstated. Very much influence your sense of identity. So as you clarify your distortion patterns, what happens is your true sense of who you are starts to emerge. Who are you really without those distortions, without those stories, without those expectations? All, I'm not going to say all, most, the vast majority of which come from distortion patterns through your culture, your religion, and your lineage. Those three things are huge. The other factor, of course, would be past lives. In addition to that is your own wounding and like a whole bunch of like personal things. But the vast majority of who you think you are in terms of your identity comes from lineage, culture, religion, to some degree, past life. Okay, so identity is very much about those things. And so the release of your attachment to your identity starts to become easier as you release those distortion patterns that I just mentioned. Make sense? So those things clarify. And what's really beautiful is that people start to step into more of their essence. Like, who are they truly? Who are they truly from a higher level, rather than just playing out the distortion that happens from those three main things that I just mentioned. Okay, it's really fascinating. And you start to be able to make choices of who you get to be and what you get to express and what you want to experience and what you get to experience. So it totally changes. So hopefully that answers your question. It was a good one. Thank you. Okay. Would being more fluid be a good approach to detaching from my identity? Okay. It depends. It depends. Because fluidity isn't actually the answer. The answer is to um, become more aware of what your identity is. Okay, so to notice what stories you tell yourself, what you think is true, um, things that you catch yourself saying about what is possible, or watching your beliefs. as to what is, like I said, possible or not possible, or what you get to experience. All that stuff, a lot of it has to do with your identity. So, is what I would say is if you have an identity where control is a really big thing for you, okay, so for me, that was a really big thing. To just immediately go into fluidity, it would be very difficult because you haven't released enough distortion to be fluid. It's actually, you're just going to intensify your distortion because you're trying to do something that you haven't resolved yet. Make sense? You're trying to make yourself do something that's contrary to the distortion pattern that's running, which is only going to intensify the distortion pattern. So the real key is to notice, like, gee, I have a lot of control patterns here, and it's really hard for me to let go of who I think I am. It's really difficult for me to change. I like things to be a certain way. To notice that, then to release the distortion patterns around what you've noticed, that will then allow you to be more fluid. And then what you could do is be like, well, wow, it was easier for me to not respond to that or to not react so negatively or to enjoy this experience rather than not, or just to be able to be in the moment. So I'll just give you a little example. So um, I tend to be a very just, or have in the past, okay, been somebody who I would say, have said in the past that I really don't like small talk. That was part of my identity. I'm just like, I couldn't be bothered with it. I'm much more direct. It's just like kind of annoying, right? That would have been what I would have said about me. Okay. And so I kind of would not bristle, but I kind of not really enjoy connecting with somebody if it was sort of like on a small talk level. Okay, like at parties or whatnot. And so part of my identity was I don't like small talk. Because I don't like small talk, I don't really like going to parties, and I don't really like chit chatting with people at dinner that I never get to see again. It's kind of like a waste of my time, right? I'm not saying this is a very pleasurable, like nice thing to be thinking, but that's like that was my part of my identity. Okay, all right. So what's really lovely is that as I've released my distortion patterns, one of the things I noticed is as I released control and my patterns around like um, trying to get the most out of everything, like that kind of thing. Like that's a control pattern, right? Where I was just like everything has to have an outcome and a purpose, and like that's kind of like where I was going all the time, instead of just being present and being in the moment with somebody. What was really lovely is the other night we went out for dinner with friends, and I there was a woman there who I didn't know, and um, I didn't particularly have a lot of overlap with her, but it was really lovely just to actually sit with her, connect with her, to just be in the present moment with her and just be with her. There was no particular outcome. There was nothing that we talked about that was riveting. There was nothing that we talked about that was particularly, I don't know, like mind boggling or whatever. What? Earth shattering. But I could just be present and be in her company and just enjoy it because I was just simply in the present moment with her with no expectation. That, for me, huge. Okay. So I know it sounds like a small thing. Like, who cares? Especially if you don't identify with that. You're just like, okay, whatever. That's not that big of a deal. To me, that's a really big deal because it means that that part of what I attach to in terms of my identity is no longer there. What does that mean? That means that it freed me in that moment to just enjoy that moment without having to like have it like create an outcome. I don't know what I was doing before, something which caused me to be in more resistance, more agitation, more, I don't know, whatever it was, lack of enjoyment. Okay. And also more close to the possibility or the magic of what could be. Because I was thinking about like, whatever else I was thinking about or being in my resistance or whatever. You see what I'm saying? So fluidity is not necessarily the answer. My suggestion would be to look for the distortion patterns and then release those things, and that will allow you to go into more fluidity. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, I'm going to answer one more question, and then I'm going to get to the GFC. This is an excellent question. Thank you for asking this. So, what's the difference between focus on growth and spiritual bypassing? Thank you for asking this question. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what spiritual bypassing is, This happens a tremendous amount in the spiritual community. It's shocking, actually. So, spiritual bypassing is when you want a certain outcome to appear to yourself or to others that you're more spiritually advanced, that you're awakened. Okay, so you're vested in the identity of being awake, right? Whatever that means to you, right? So what happens is that because you're trying to get to that outcome in terms of your identity of being awake, in terms of to yourself and to others, instead of dealing with your distortion pattern, sitting with it, noticing it, being aware of it, then confirming the removal of it, all that stuff, you're just like, oh no, everything's wonderful. It's all good. I'm surrendered. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? You don't actually experience it and go through the fire of releasing the distortion pattern. I'm not saying it's always fire to release distortion pattern, by the way, but I'm just saying that a lot of people who spiritually bypass are not dealing with their crap, let's call it, okay? Because they just want to feel really good, but they don't really want to address the stuff that's still there, that's festering, that is a distortion pattern that causes their life to look like crap and to feel like crap and to like be like crap, okay? I'm not poo-pooing or belittling the desire to become awake. What I'm suggesting is to spiritually bypass, okay, because you don't want to do the work, isn't going to free you. It only makes you feel temporarily better, but it actually doesn't change anything. So when you focus on growth, like Fiona's asking, the focus on growth is, geez, man, I really don't like how controlling I am, right? That's not great. It doesn't make me feel very good. It stresses me out. I get really anxious, etc. Right? So you acknowledge that that's there. It doesn't feel very good. I mean, you can't really escape it. I mean, when you're by yourself at night, there you are, right? So, okay, all right, I have this desire to grow beyond this. Great. I need to do the work. I need to do the frequency work. I need to sit with myself. I need to see where it is that I'm controlling. Whoa, that's a lot of control right there. What's under that control, right? So then now you're facing it and you're seeing in yourself how deep it runs, how it affects everything in your life, like all that sort of stuff, right? So you do the work. And because you're doing it, what happens as you're releasing this distortion pattern around control, for example, things start to shift, right? And then all of a sudden you start to feel good. But you're not, does that make sense to you? You're not afraid to look at yourself, to do the work of being accountable, to release the distortion pattern. Only, let me make this really clear. Only you can liberate you. You have this an extraordinarily powerful thing called free will. It's extraordinarily powerful. You get to liberate yourself. Okay? You're the one. All right. But if you don't do it because you don't want to feel bad, you're not getting towards liberation. You're kind of just more in the muck, so to speak. Right? So that's a really great question. So that's the difference between spiritually bypassing, which is just trying to get to the end outcome of feeling really great without actually doing the work and seeing your own stuff, and then being like, okay, let's go. I'm going to like walk through the fire, right? Because I really want to get to a true experience of that feeling of freedom. Just like I had that experience with that woman. That to me is freedom. The freedom to be fully in that moment, just connecting with this person. That's it, with no expectation. It's very magical. It doesn't sound like a tremendous deal, but it's huge because it's so clear. And now you're aligned with life, and all this possibility opens to you. Okay? So it's really amazing. Thank you for asking the question. All right, so that takes us to the end of the Q&A. All right, I'm sorry. Thank you for asking all your questions. I couldn't get to all of them, but you asked some really good ones. Hopefully those were helpful to you. And now we are going to jump into the GFC. All right, here we go. Oh, just to give context, what we were going to be doing today is releasing the distortion patterns. We're starting to release the distortion patterns around what locks us into habituation and locks us into attachment to identity and keeps us from seeing it. So, meaning giving you more distance, okay, from your own little S self or your ego mind. All right. So this is one GFC. It will start to give you more momentum. This is an incredibly important practice. It's the beginning. Okay. For some of you, it's yet another. There's always more beginnings. You know, as you continue to rise in your resonance, there's always more to uncover. So wherever you are, this will meet you and raise you up. Okay, here we go. Settling in. Let's rise together. Becoming aware of your body, please. And as you become aware of your body, becoming aware of your heart beating in your chest. Now, for some of you, you can just feel it with your feeling sense. And others of you, you're like, yeah, I can't do that, which is fine. You're just going to put your hand over your physical heart, over the left side of your chest, and you'll likely feel your heart beating underneath your hand. Okay? So if you can't feel it with your feeling sense, just put your hand on that wonderful heart of yours and feel the reverberation of your heartbeat in your chest. Good. Excellent. Wonderful. Becoming aware now, please, of the soles of your feet. And as you become aware of the soles of your feet, noticing the texture of whatever they're touching, the space between your toes, the arches of your feet. Mhm. Good. Becoming aware now, please, of the space between the center of the earth and the soles of your feet. So imagining, sensing, feeling, becoming aware of, or just knowing the distance between the center of the earth and the soles of your feet. Good. Mhm. Noticing your body again. If you're more relaxed than you were before, if you're a little sleepy, and what I'm doing here is helping to amplify these earth frequencies so you can feel more centered in time. The earth exists in the present moment, linear time, and in the now. Good. Bringing your attention now, please, to your heart space in the center of your chest, in your nipple line. Let's ask ourselves the question, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? So for those of you who are new, I'm going to repeat that one more time. How can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? So by asking yourself this question, whether or not you're aware of it, your higher self responds by increasing your frequency resonance. So it's like you're starting to take a running jump. I'm catching you at the apex of your jump. I'm pulling your frequency resonance higher, irrespective of where you began. Some of you feel a lot, some of you feel nothing. It doesn't matter. Neither is more right. It's just different. Good. How high your frequency resonance is dictates absolutely everything from what your life looks like, how you feel about it, how much momentum you get to experience. There we go. So, this is one of the most important things we do together. Excellent. Bring your attention right now to the center of your solar plexus, okay, which is between your belly button and the base of your sternum, right into the center of that space. So, to have more distance from habituation, your attachment to identity, you must come further and further in to the 0 point. So, helping you with this. we go. Excellent. Becoming aware of the entire solar plexus now. Okay, and the heart space. All right. So this is the fear of releasing the known. This is huge. Okay. As humans, we really don't like letting this go. Okay. It's very scary to us. It's part of the reason we don't like the dark, in addition to a number of things, like meaning a dark room, for example. Okay. So let's release the fear of the unknown. There we go. And right behind it, releasing the attachment to what is comfortable and known to you, okay, which is both habit and who you think you are. And as you remain focused on this point, starting to imagine, sense, feel, or become aware of a really deep, brilliant blue, which starts to expand through the center of you, all the way out in all directions around you. Yeah, good. Bringing your attention now, please, to your xiphoid process, which is right at the base of your sternum. Okay, so your sternum is a big, thick bone in the center of your chest, where your ribs meet in front of your body. So if you trace it from the hollow of your throat, which is the top, all the way down through the center of your chest, all the way to the bottom, where it goes from bone to flesh, right underneath it, that bone, that's your xiphoid process. Okay, so right there. So there's an odd interplay between habituation and attachment to identity. Okay? It's sort of like they reinforce each other in some ways. Okay? Like what you habituate to that you don't even notice reinforces your attachment to your identity. Your identity reinforces what you habituate to. Okay? This is not a helpful dynamic in terms of momentum. It just locks you in place. So let's release that dynamic. Softening into this space. Now, if you don't know what that means, just imagine dissolving or sinking into or dropping into this space in your xiphoid process. dropping further into the center of your body. Mhm. Good. Imagining, becoming aware of, sensing, or feeling your brilliance from deep within, expanding out in all directions, getting brighter and stronger. Yeah. Mm. Good. Yep. Lovely. Bringing your attention, please, to the back half of your brain. So that's the back half of your brain. So if you imagined slicing your brain vertically in half, the back half. In addition to your crown, please. The back half of your brain and your crown. Mhm. We're going to release the fear of the loss of identity. But what it means to lose that. Who are you if you're not who you think you are? It's kind of strange. Do you still exist? Right? So all this conundrum, just thinking, the fear patterns, the mental patterns, let's release that. And right behind it, this distortion pattern of if I'm not who I think I am, do I matter? Hmm. Yeah, good. Bringing your attention now, please, to the very center of your pineal gland, which is a sphere in the very center of your brain. So bringing your attention there. This is giving you more distance for your thoughts, your feelings, and what you believe is true. So I'm not suggesting that what you believe is true is completely false. I'm suggesting that not you don't want all of it because it's unexamined. So let's give ourselves distance so we can examine what it is that we want to be true for us rather than just letting it run on automatic. There we go. Often what we believe to be true is a result of habituation to a large degree and who we think we are. So it's helpful to examine this, to have distance from it, to notice. Yeah, nice. Bringing your attention now, please, to the very center of your pineal gland and the very center of your heart space, the center of your chest and your nipple line, and one more spot, an inch above your perineum, inside your body. So your perineum is underneath you, between your anus and your genitals. Okay? So if you find that spot and go up into your body by about an inch, right in there. Those 3 points. Okay. So now giving you more momentum. Whether it's type 1 to get you unstuck, or type 2 to give you more acceleration from wherever you are once you are unstuck. Really good. Bringing your attention now, please, to that xiphoid process, right at the base of that sternum, and about 3 inches or 7 centimeters directly beneath it in a straight line towards your belly button. We're going to now clear out and reset your pain body because your pain body has a memory of you before you did the frequency work. So if we clear it out and reset it, your integration into the higher resonating version of you will be a lot more smooth. This just takes a couple of seconds. Excellent. Everyone take a big breath in. Hold it for a second or two. Release with some sound. Excellent. Blinking your eyes open. Looking at something inanimate. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining. And I look forward to whenever we meet next on this YouTube Live or whatever GFC. Bye for now.